Hi there! We have quite a journey in front of us. In this video, we're going to take a very comprehensive look at our new Insolidus Lyrical Choir. Insolidus represents the 7th time I've recorded choirs for the purpose of sampling. If you're familiar with the 8DO catalog, you'll know that we have our Libris Children's Choir. We also have our Requiem Professional, which is a traditional symphonic choir. And then we have Lacrimosa, which is a 200-person super epic choir. And then we also have our Studio Sopranos, which is a smaller library dedicated to sopranos. But in the case of Insolidus, we're looking at a lyrical choir. We got 40 males, we got 24 females. You can play them together or completely separate, and I'll demonstrate that in the user interface as well. But the whole concept with Insolidus was to create a library that was infused with emotions, like the sessions were deep for all of us. And to me, Insolidus is probably the first new generation orchestral library when it really comes to realism. I've never played with anything that sounds so real. I've never played with a choir that feels so real when you play it on the keys. And there is so much you can do in the library. Let me just briefly show you the user interface here, and then we'll get into the master demo. And after that, we're going to be listening to a variety of the individual patches in the library, and I'll also play a little bit with our upcoming Century Brass solo horns as well. But in its core, Insolidus is really created around a choir that has motion and emotion in that motion as well. We have 2 syllables, we have 3 syllables, we have 4 syllables that are each completely independent sample sets. For example, if we look here at the 2 syllables, you have a variety of different syllables within that. Or if we look at the 3 syllables, for example, or 4, you have a variety of unique phrases to that bank as well. And one of the best things about this library, and one of the reasons this demo didn't take too long to create, is the fact that we have polyphonic legato for all these things here. It's absolutely amazing. We also have traditional monophonic legato, and I'll demonstrate that in the video as well, if you want to play sort of more current generation choirs. We have recorded multivowels, as you may be familiar with, both in our Lacrimosa and other libraries. We have these very elaborate set of multivowels that allows you to create phrases and strings of sentences, and you can combine those with the arcs up here as well. We have crescendo arcs, we have unique swells with the syllables as well. So in essence, you really have all the different ways that the choir can swell naturally. And as you're going to hear in this demo, there's some really elaborate strings of sentences and words using our phrase sequencer here, and I'll demonstrate that in great length as well. But why don't we just kick it off here? Let's start with the demo here and listen to the entire thing, and then let's go through the individual patches afterwards and let me demonstrate how much you can do with this library and how insanely easy it is to use. So, welcome to Insolidus Awake. and that is Insolidus. As I mentioned before, this choir to me is a lyrical choir. It can sing and it has a human quality that we haven't been able to truly encapsulate before now. And a part of that relates to the way that the library is programmed, because we have this polyphonic legato for the majority of patches, and it is absolutely amazing to use because you can really communicate your thoughts fluently on the keys in a way we haven't been able to in the past. So let me just show you these two syllable arcs here, and we're going to be using the articulation sequence in this case. So you can see it's going to be cycling through a couple of numbers here, and I'll also demonstrate how to use it, but let me just play some things live here on the keys. So you can see as I'm playing that it's cycling through the different articulations here for our arc 2 syllables. And you can always rearrange these in any way you want. In fact, you can also go out of our sequencer here and just trigger one of them. Or if you want to have them based on velocity or key switch control, for example, so you can control each articulation and key switch, you just click up here in the triangular symbol. But in this case here, we're actually using our phrase sequences. So you can see it's phrasing through the different sentences up here. And we actually have 64 of them here. Let me just use the randomizer right now, and you can see it populates the sequence here with all the different words. Each number represents a phrase up here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And you actually have 64 slots if you really want to go into like cycling through some heavy duty sequences. But let me just show you here. Let's just randomize something here and so you can see I'm playing polyphonically, and when I let go of the keys, it triggers into the next sequence part here. Let me show you how that works for our 3 syllables as well. And let me try to go a little bit into the sequence here. You actually heard this very calm sort of voice in the beginning of the composition, this guy here. So, you know, just a single voice. And even if we don't change any phrases and I just play with ni ma su right now, let me just show you, because once you have that natural swelling arc, which is predominantly the way that a lyrical choir will sing most of the time, you get so much more emotion out of it. It's kind of amazing actually. So I'll just play with ni ma su and nothing else. And that's polyphonic legato in essence. I'm playing whatever I want with as how many cluster keys as I want, and it just works. It's phenomenal that way. Let me demonstrate the 4 arc syllable as well. So we both have 2, 3, and 4 arc syllables. In this case here, let's listen to this part of the demo. And obviously we've only been listening to arc articulations. We actually have this whole sample set here also in a static fashion where you can crossfade between different velocities of the choir. So we both have the natural swell articulations in the library, and then we also have the static, more traditional multivowels in the library. We wanted to give you both approaches, but in my opinion, if you really want to score something lyrical, it's very, very hard to mod wheel your way through all the emotions and vowel changes and delicacies of a tone changing, something as complicated as the human voice. And it's something we've learned over time. There are just some times where you have to actually record instruments or humans as they are. And that brings up a question that we've gotten a lot in regards to word builders. There's a reason we have not done word builders, and we will not do word builders for future projects as well. Ask yourself this simple question: when did you ever hear a great mock-up with a choir that sounded realistic made with a word builder? It doesn't exist. And the reason is that in order to do a word builder, we would need to create something that had legato transitions between every single vowel you could possibly do. And for anyone who is intimately familiar with legato recordings, it's about 4,000 different interval recordings just for one of those transitions. So imagine how many different ways the vocals will actually work in regards to singing between different vowels. So what we've done instead is to build what we call our phrase sequencer, and that's the one I've been demonstrating up here. And the obvious conclusion that many people draw is like, well, I only have like 100 different articulations in this library. I would actually like to be able to recite my own text or my own words or thoughts. But ask yourself this other question: how many people actually know what a choir is singing? And in order to iterate that point a little more, let me just play you a video from YouTube here featuring Kamada Burana, mistranslated. It's really the perfect video to describe why it doesn't matter what a choir is singing. The core point with this library and our sort of philosophy of recording is that it has to sound real. And as you can hear in this demo, this is a new generation choir. It sounds a hell of a lot more real than what we've been able to hear in the past. And you have so many different options. Let me also just mention before I play the video that Insolidus is also completely tempo synced. You can go half tempo, triplets, and you can go twice as fast if you want to do that. And we're also doing that for updates for our previous libraries. But let me just get back to the point here in regards to why it doesn't matter whether you have a word builder or not, because nobody understands what a choir is singing. Check this one out. Alright, so let's continue the journey into the library. As I mentioned, we both have polyphonic legato patches for all our arcs, but we also have traditional monophonic legato in Insolidus, and it's actually dynamic, meaning that we record legato and sustains at multiple velocity layers for A, A, O, and U. Let me just show a little bit. And that's where we are with today's technology. That's where we left it with Lacrimosa that does have multivowels and legato like this, but you don't have the polyphonic legato. And as you can see in these live demonstration, it's literally just me playing live on the keys. We actually had 4 teasers building up to Insolidus that you can find on YouTube. All of those were played live in hand as well. And in some ways, the 2 most magical things about Insolidus is the fact that it's so incredibly playable on the keys, and it has such a wealth of emotion on the inside of it as well. Let me try to play a little bit what we call the 3/4 arcs down here. These are triplet based arcs, and again you can control both half tempo, triplet, non-triplet, and double tempo down here, but let me just play a little bit with what we call multivowels 3/4. And as you're probably noticing, these are not arc-based, these are static. So all of a sudden it actually feels a little more like stale, if you will, but it can be incredibly useful to have these articulations and use them together with the swell articulations as well. And you can obviously sculpt these as well. Let me give you another example of that. Let me try to go down to what we call the 4/4 MW here, which is a multi-layer patch for controlling the choir fully. So these also are static velocity layers, meaning that they don't have the swelling arc motion to them, but you can actually sculpt them with your mod wheel. And let me just try to do that. Let me just mimic something basic as a crescendo. And this is really the best we can do with current technology. And then I'll play a real crescendo afterwards so you can test the difference. All right, so that's the best we can do with crossfade technology. Let me try to play you a real crescendo. Right? So there is an obvious difference in the sound. One of the beautiful things about both of these articulations is that you can play them polyphonically as well. So let me try to do a little more elaborate stuff here with the carbon octave on this one. And then let me compare it to the actual crescendo articulation. All right, and the same thing with the crescendo articulation. You have the best of both worlds, whether you want to crossfade or whether you want to use a crescendo-based articulation, but you can actually take it further than that. Let me try to demonstrate what we call our swell articulations. So we had arcs that are these natural motions going from softer into stronger dynamics and then down again. We have our crescendo-based articulations here where it sort of goes upwards the whole way. We have our mod wheel-based articulations where you can control it fully with velocity layers. But we also have these beautiful swell-based articulations, and they're absolutely great. Let me just play you a segment from the demo here so you can hear what it sounds like, and then I'll isolate it. So you can hear the choir actually goes through multiple rhythmic swells. Let me try to isolate that one. And obviously there's a lot going on in terms of polyphonic legato in this one too. And it's so awesome because the polyphonic legato allows me to change the notes at whatever point I want. So you can hear at this point here towards the end of it, it goes like da da. And it's awesome because it's happening at an uneven part of the phrase, so you can really play anything you want. I just wanted to give it that little sort of twist in the end. Let me try that on one of the other phrases here. And that, my friend, is consistency. So you can take these phrases that have multiple swells in them and you can apply them to the same sequence down here. And that's because we spent an enormous amount of time shaping the samples in the same way. So there's a perfect symmetry within these articulations and how they correlate to each other out here as well. And that's really, really important in terms of giving you the ultimate experience where everything syncs in unity. You can take different patches and put them together and it all sounds alive. You probably also noticed that we had a little bit of horn and flugelhorn in the demo. These are both from our upcoming Century Brass collection, and if you thought this choir sounded real, wait till you hear these guys, because Century Brass for me represents the same sort of leap into realism as we've done with the choir here, but using a wealth of new sample techniques, and I'm not quite ready to show them to you guys, even though we're in deep beta on the library. But let me just play a little bit here with the French horn, and then I'll play a little bit with the flugelhorn afterwards as well. It's absolutely brilliant. And again, it has that emotional intention in the sound, something I've missed in so many libraries. I can't tell you guys, and I'm sure you've done it as well. When you sit with a choir library or a string library, you load some patch and you're inspired, and then you try it out, and it doesn't sound real because it was never real in the first place. And that sort of ties into the philosophy within Insolidus, but particularly with our new generation orchestral series and Century Brass. It's really, really amazing what you can do with it. So let me just play a little bit here with the French horn and then the flugel. full ability to crossfade through dynamics on the mod wheel, but in a completely new way. We've developed an entirely new technique for crossfading that allows you to go from the softest to the hardest, but without feeling those bumps and weird transitions and face noises that you normally get. But there's so much stuff to cover with Insolidus. It's actually incredible. I realize I've been sitting here and talking, and I haven't touched on some of the fundamentals. For example, we have 8 different microphones. You have 4 hall-based microphones, mixed, deca, far, wide, and you have 4 individual spots. If you want a more close and intimate sound of the choir, you can definitely get that. You have your articulation bars here and the ability to assign them, for example, to velocity or your key switches, or if you want, you can use our phrase sequencer in here. On top of that, we also have our options page here. It actually allows you to control both males and females separately. We also have individual patches. If you don't want both males and female loaded together, we have separate patches for that as well. We have patches that are specifically designed for Time Machine Pro, which I prefer to use with the library because it sounds more realistic. But we also have less resource demanding patches that are using the normal Time Machine inside of Kontakt as well. But let's wrap this video up. Let's listen one more time to the demo here. And I look so much forward to hear what you guys are going to do with this library. It is so capable, and it's something I'll be using for many years to come. We just hit it right. And I have to say, it is one of the crown jewels in the ADO collection in terms of its emotional expression and ease of use on the keys using Polyphonic Legato. But forgive me for repeating myself so much here. It's hard to communicate with words what it actually feels like, but just trust me on it, man. Like, it feels so good on the keys. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Troels from ADO, signing out.